Hi, in this video we're going to be looking at some sample questions and answers for part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. The topic of the questions we're going to look at today is age. This might seem like quite a simple topic. You might think the examiner might just say, "How old are you?" But of course, it's going to be more than that. They want you to show a bit more skill than that with your English. So they're going to ask you some questions that get you to kind of give a bit more detail about your age. So we'll look at the 4 questions that I've chosen to look at in this video, and we'll also be looking at the sample answers to those questions, and after that we'll give a bit of an analysis of those answers to show you why they're really high level answers that are going to be, well, the kind of answers a native speaker or someone who's going to get around band 9 would give. Now, one of the reasons I've chosen the questions that we've got today is because they're doing something that's really quite common for the examiner to do in part 1 of the speaking test. They're getting you to talk about different times during your life. They're asking you really to use different tenses for these different questions in your answers. They want to know whether you can use different verb tenses comfortably and appropriately when you're in the speaking test. This will be something that will really always happen in part 1. We don't know what topic you're going to have to talk about. Well, they're trying to surprise you a little bit with the topic that comes up, but we do know the style of questions is going to be quite similar. The questions are going to be about you, and they're going to get you to talk about different periods of time in your life because they want to see if you can do this. So the key is you show them these skills when you answer the question. And that's what we'll be doing in the answers that we're giving today to these questions. But first, let's have a look at the questions and see what they're asking us to do. So if we look at the first question here, it says, are you happy to be the age you are now? So this is very clear. It's about the present. So of course you've got to talk about the present, your age now. But also, of course, the question is, are you happy to be the age you are now? So you've got to say whether you're happy or not. So probably you're going to answer this question first with a yes or no, and then explain a bit why. Again, it's important to show the examiner there that you can comfortably talk about yourself in the present. Now, if we move to the second question, we'll see that that is slightly different. Here you can see it says, when you were a child, did you think a lot about your future? So you can hopefully see here that this question, of course, is about the past, when you were a child. So, of course, the examiner wants you to talk about the past. Of course, it's whether you thought a lot about the future when you were a child. So it's a little bit confusing there with the wording. You'll hear the word future, but of course, you're not meant to talk about the future. Really, you're talking about the past and, well, whether you thought a lot about the future when you were a child. But again, the verb tense is quite clear there, and it's clear, well, in the answer, they're going to want you to talk about the past when you were a child. So notice how that changes from the first question. Well, it was asking you about the present. The second question here is asking you about the past. And again, this is a very common thing that happens in part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. And if we move on to the third question, you'll see it again, it's a bit different. Do you think you have changed as you have got older? So of course here, this is again a bit different and a little bit more complex here, because of course you can see in the question, they're actually using the present perfect tense, have changed. Do you think you have changed as you have got older? So of course we're talking about from the past until the present. In fact, you're kind of comparing yourself in the past with yourself in the present. So again, they're testing out your kind of ability to use different verb tenses here. And I guess really the easiest thing to do in this situation is, well, copy the tense of the question in your answer. That would be really the easiest way to approach these kinds of questions. So yes, that's the third question. And the final question, again, is doing something different. If you look here, it asks you, what will be different about your life in the future? So of course, here it's quite clear. It's asking you about the future. You can see will in the question there, which makes it quite clear. They want you to talk about the future. So of course, you have to talk about the future in your answer. There we go. So you can see here, these 4 questions here are different in terms of, well, what period of time they're getting you to talk about. But of course, they're linked together through the topic of age. These styles of questions are really, really common in part 1 of the IELTS speaking test. And it's really important that you practice talking about different times in your life. Sometimes talking about the past, sometimes the present, and sometimes the future. So you get better at using verb tenses in English. It's something that can be quite difficult for people who are learning English as a second language. What we'll do now is look at the answers to these questions, and hopefully you'll be able to notice how we're really showing the examiner what they want to hear in our answers. We'll be using the tenses from the questions and focusing on the question completely, fully answering the question, but not doing too much, not going into any unnecessary detail that the examiner doesn't really ask for. After I've gone through the questions, of course, we'll give an analysis of the answers. But for now, I'll just go through the questions one by one and give those answers. So here we go. Are you happy to be the age you are now? Yes, I'm in my mid-30s and I suppose that isn't a bad age to be. I've got quite a lot of experience over the years, but I don't feel too old. When you were a child, did you think a lot about your future? Honestly, I didn't really think much about my future when I was growing up. I was more focused on just having fun with my friends and family. But of course, I had some dreams and goals. Do you think you've changed as you have got older? Yes, definitely. I think I've changed a lot. I've become more confident and independent, and I've learned a lot from the stuff I've been through. What will be different about your life in the future? I can't be sure of exactly what the future holds, but I imagine I'll continue growing and learning. I also hope to start a family with my wife in the very near future. So there we go. There's the answers. Now you can see with all of those answers, they're following a kind of a similar kind of strategy with our answers, that we're giving nice full answers that are not too short, but certainly not too long. All of them are around 2 sentences, maybe sometimes a little bit more than that, sometimes a little bit less. We don't have to be too strict with a 2-sentence format, but they're all a similar kind of length with the answer. They're simple questions, so we can give quite simple answers here. Some students will try to overcomplicate part 1 of the test, and this is not where you need to speak at length. Of course, you can show that skill in other parts of the speaking test. Hopefully you noticed how we were using verb tense in our answers, but again, we'll go through that in a bit of detail when I'm analysing those answers. And well, that's what we'll do now. So for the first question, which was, are you happy to be the age you are now? You can see in the answer straight away, we make a clear, direct response where we said yes. You don't have to do this, but it's quite good to bring focus to your answer and make it easier to give a nice clear answer after that. Then we've described the present. I'm in my mid-30s. So we're talking about the age I am now. Of course, mid-30s there, meaning kind of an age range from between like 33 to 37. It's the mid-30s, 30s being that decade from 30 to 39. Of course, if you were younger than that, in your 20s or in your mid-20s, of course, you can be in your early or late 30s or 20s or whatever age you are. So nice ways there. We've demonstrated that we know how to talk about age and age ranges. This is something that is useful to talk about if this topic comes up. Then we said, I suppose, that isn't a bad age to be. So we've explained a bit afterwards, right? It's not a bad age to be. Now, after that, we've given a second sentence. I think this is a good idea. And you could continue that second sentence talking, yes, about now. And really what we've done here, you can see, is use the present perfect from the past until the present. We've done this because it's important to explain why we're happy to be the age we are now. I've got quite a lot of experience over the years. So you can see there we've used the present perfect. But I don't feel too old. Well, that is now we're not feeling too old. So it explains it a bit. And yes, we've got a bit of variety there with the verb tenses, but it kind of fits, right? The first sentence is focused on the tense of the question, but then we've given a bit of detail and we've decided to use the present perfect tense to explain a bit more. Now, if we look at the next question and answer, the question was, when you were a child, did you think a lot about your future? So of course, we want to focus on the past here. And you can see in the answer we do. Honestly, I didn't really think much about my future when I was growing up. So there we go. I mean, we can see straight away, right? We answer the question directly. I didn't really think much about my future. So of course, we're using the question in our answer. We've changed the phrase when you were a child a bit, when I was growing up. We're actually using the past continuous there. So using, you know, a bit of flexibility with the verb tenses, but of course it's got the same meaning there. And we're focused on talking about the past. Now, in the next sentence, we go on and we explain that a bit more. I was more focused on just having fun with my friends and family. Okay, so we're just using the past simple there, and we're just explaining, right, why maybe we didn't think much about the future. But then also we say, of course, you know, it's natural to think a bit. So we've contrasted that with the word but, and then we've said, of course, I had some dreams and goals. Nothing too complex with the answer there, right? But a nice, clear two-sentence answer to that question, where we're showing the examiner that we can comfortably talk about the past. That's really the key there. That's what the examiner wants to know. So if we look at the third question and answer, you remember the question was, do you think you have changed as you've got older? And of course, you can see here in the answer, nice direct answer again. Yes, definitely. Very short first sentence there. Then we've explained that a bit as well. We've said, I think I've changed a lot. Well, again, directly answering the question there with the present perfect tense, with a nice contraction there between I and have and saying I've, which is nice to do to kind of show off good pronunciation. Then another sentence after that saying I've become more confident and independent. So describing how we've changed a bit there, giving a bit of detail, again using the same verb tense, and I've learned a lot from the stuff I've been through. So yes, nothing too complex there really in terms of vocabulary. We're not showing off too much. I mean, to be through something, to say I've been through, is to experience something over time. So a bit of idiomatic vocabulary there, but again, nothing too complex. Now, the final question, you remember, was about the future. What will be different about your life in the future? And we've got a nice phrase at the beginning here, which actually talks about the present to start with. I can't be sure of exactly what the future holds. So we're kind of saying, well, we don't know. And of course, nobody knows about the future and what's going to happen. We show that we have got this nice ability to talk about the future there, and we've got an awareness of the collocation between the verb hold and the noun future. The future can hold something. Some people might not be aware of this. It shows kind of a good level of awareness of the way we use vocabulary in English. So a nice thing there, and it's connected to the word future. But then we go on and we show we've got this ability then to talk about the future. But I imagine. A nice word to show that you know that we use to talk about the future. I imagine. And then we use the future tense. I'll continue growing. So I'll, meaning, well, I will, but we make a contraction there. So using the future simple. I also hope to start a family. So hope as well, just like imagine, we use these kinds of words to talk about the future. So we've shown this good ability to be able to talk about the future here in this answer. And like I said, this is what these questions are really asking you to do. The examiner wants to know if you have this ability to talk about different times in your life. And those answers that we looked at show that we can do that. And really you can see most of the time we're just relying on the question for the grammar we're using in the answer. Okay, occasionally we've got maybe a second sentence which expands on that and uses maybe a slightly different verb tense. Most of the time we're just trying to keep it simple and kind of just naturally answer the question directly and not go into too much detail, not overcomplicate things. Because again, as soon as you overcomplicate things, other things are going to suffer. Like your fluency will break down. You're probably going to make more errors. So really in part one, especially part one, it's about keeping things simple, not trying to overcomplicate things. But there we go. Hopefully it was useful to you to look at these sample answers and you can have a think about how you would answer similar questions to these. And well, it's a good idea to go away and practice using these different verb tenses so you can kind of naturally use them when you're in the speaking test. But there we go. Thanks for watching, guys. And do remember to click the like button if you haven't already. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then do remember to do that so you don't miss out on any similar videos in the future. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next video.